you want.
Awesome. Alrighty.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so thanks guys for coming out. I really appreciate it. Today we're just going to be running through some basic Python. Python's really powerful. It's really cool. I've been using it a lot for work, and you'll be amazed at like what you can do with just knowing a little bit. Yeah, we're just going to jump in and show you what we kind of thought we had in mind, and then we have an extra exercise if you guys are up for a challenge afterwards. So we're just going to be running straight from the basics and just building our knowledge from the ground up. So this is what we're going to be building today. So if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to be doing it in REPL just because it's a little bit easier and you don't have to really set up an IDE or anything. So 1 second. So you're going to just type in your name, and then we're just going to be generating a random number, and then we're going to be taking a guess. And then it's going to tell you if your guess is too low, too high, or just right. And then you're just going to keep guessing, and the way you break it is you just type in a word or any character that's not a number. Just like that. So it'll be really simple. It'll be a really good introduction into variables, strings, all the basics for not only programming, but also Python. So we're just going to jump straight into it. Okay, can you guys still see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And then also feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So first we're going to start out with variables. Like if you've ever taken a math class, it's very similar to that. So if you want to, it's like what it's called initialize a variable. Your variable is always going to be on the left side, and you set it equal to the thing on the right side. Now, here's the pointer. So yeah, you see it? The pointer. So yes, okay, thank you. So yeah, so you'd be whatever you want to set is going to be on the left side, equal to, and then the value on the right side. So for instance, if I set x equal to 0, and notice how there's no semicolon. So in other languages like JavaScript or C++, whenever you end a line, it's really common to use a semicolon to denote that. But for Python, it's very loose, and you just literally set x equal to 0. And then let's say if we wanted to set x equal to x plus 1, so that's basically adding 1 to the previous value of x. And if you printed it out, 0 plus 1 is indeed equal to 1, right? And then similar to this, if we printed out number, if number equals 3 plus 1, it's going to be 4. And then over here, this is a different type of variable, which you might notice. So if you ever worked with strings, if you ever want, a string is basically like a type of character. So if you notice, there's quotations around these threes. So they're not just regular numbers. You can't add them like you usually would. So if you add two strings together, you'll notice that this happens. So this is something called concatenation. So you're basically kind of mashing these two strings right next to each other because they're not read in as integers right now. They're just strings. So think of it as like, I don't know, like two texts. Like this could be A and this could be A. A plus A would just give you AA. It wouldn't actually add them. So then my question to you guys is, what do you guys think will print here? So this is a string of 3 plus the number 1. So just feel free to unmute. Oh, there's chat. I totally missed.
That's just me talking in the
Okay,
chat.
that's just you. So feel free to talk and chat. I prefer if you guys unmute. Don't feel shy. No problem.
I think it will print the 3 and then the 1.
So you think it'll print the 3 and then the 1?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone else have any ideas?
Would it print an error because they're different like types of variables?
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other ideas? Just want to wait up. Feel free to. It'll be a lot better if you just unmute and just say what you think. It's a really good way to kind of explain your thoughts, and then you'll remember it after if it's different.
Yeah, I think an error might occur.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so what happens is something called a type error, and it says this is the exact error. So whenever you run something in any code, it'll almost always like tell you some kind of hint in terms of like what's going wrong here. So this is what it prints out. It says can only concatenate string, not int to string. So if we go back, basically what's happening is this is a string and this is an integer. So they're two different types of variables. So what we would have to do is something called typecasting. So we'd basically have to convert this to an integer, or we'd have to convert this to a string in order for them to be compatible. So another way to think about it is like, I don't know, like fruits and vegetables. Like you need two fruits, like apples and oranges can go together, but vegetables like, I don't know, like broccoli and lettuce, they go together. So you kind of have to like convert them to be the same. Okay, so yeah, going on. So this is something that's gonna be important for the demo today. So this is kind of three things mashed together, but we'll run through it. So it's conditionals, comparison operator, and user input. So we're gonna be using the variable that we just learned about. And then whenever you wanna take in user input, this is the syntax, or just syntax basically means like the way to do it, the way to type it out. So you're gonna be writing input, left parentheses, and then it's optional, but you can basically type in a string here. So we just went over strings, it's with the 2 quotation marks, and a message. So basically print this message and it'll save whatever the user puts in. So for instance, if I actually ran this code, it would print, you know, enter a guess, and then this line here would be the user typing in 3, okay? So now let's go through an if statement. So this is basically gonna be the conditionals and the comparison operator. So we have an if statement here, and we have something called a comparison operator. So if statements like, just like a general statement. So like, if I want to kind of complete this task by 5, this needs to happen, right? Just like in general, like anytime when you're thinking about what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, it's kind of like an if statement. And then less than sign, you probably are familiar with that. And then also here's how you print. So first we want to say, if the number is less than the guess, then we want to print too low, bro. Else, if the number is right, if the number is exactly equal to our guess, then we print correct. And then one last else statement, it's going to be too high, because that's the last condition that we haven't really typed out explicitly. So
Hey, Oliver.
Yeah, what's up?
Why do we use 2 equal signs for in the second one if number is equal? Yes.
Good question. Thanks for clarifying that. So what this is this is a comparison operator. So this equal sign up here, number equals 10. When you use 1 equal sign, that's setting the value to a variable, or setting the value to something. So when you're doing a doubles equal sign, it's a comparison operator, so you're comparing 2 things together. You can also do like a not equals by doing an exclamation mark equals. So that's another comparison operator, and you can like search them up if you're interested. So if you guys could unmute and just kind of talk about what you think prints here, given that the fact that the number is 3 that the user put in. And
Too low.
Too low, right? Yeah, cool. So I'll speed up a little bit. So let me know if you're confused, but the number was 10 and the guess was 3. So 3 is less than 10, so it will print too low. Okay, so then we're gonna go through something else that's important for this demo. It's gonna be something called a while loop. You've probably heard of it before if you're familiar with programming. So what this is saying is, first we're gonna set a value of count equal to 0, and we have a while loop that's basically saying, while this condition is true, so it could be any condition. It could be like, it could be, I don't know, if like this variable is false or this variable is true. But for this instance, we're gonna say, oh, nope, don't look at that. While the count is less than 4, print sum is awesome, and then add 1 to the count. So my question to you guys is, how many times do you think sum is gonna print? And what do you think the value of count will be once this is done?
Wouldn't it print 4 times and it would be 3?
What'd you say?
Wouldn't it print 4 times and the value would be 3?
Yeah.
So, or would the value be 4 because it gets to the end?
Does anyone else want to try to talk about what they think?
I think count needs to be 3 for this to run, or below.
Okay. Hate to call other people out, but I think it's a good learning. Jenna, what do you think?
I think that it'll print it 4 times and the count will be 3.
Okay. Benit, do you have any idea?
Count will be 4. It'll print 4 times.
Count will be 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to actually just run through this. So thanks, guys, for responding. So this is what's going to happen, right? So it's definitely going to it's definitely going to print 4 times. So this is the first, second, third, and fourth time. Okay? So on the left-hand side, we have basically the value of count right here and here. So this is the value of count at each, what they call it, like an iteration. So that's basically just like the value of the variable at that point. So 0, count less than 0, or 0, count is equal to 0, which is less than 4. So then we're going to add 1 to count again, and we'll be at 1. So 1 is less than 4, add 1 to count. 2 less than 4, add 1 to count. 3 less than 4, add 1 to count. But then what you'll notice, 4 is equal to 4, but 4 is not less than the 4. So it's not actually going to print that last time, right? So it's actually just going to print 4 times, and the value of count based on this, I think will be, it'll be 3, because it'll add 3 times.
Oliver, I think.
No, 4.
It'll be 4, right?
Yeah, no, it'll be 4. It'll be 4. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it'll run the fourth time.
Yeah, it'll run the 4th time.
And then add the 1 to make 4 equal to 4.
No, I'm mistaken.
It starts at 0, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day. So it'll actually go. It'll go to 4, but once it's at the value of 4, this condition is no longer true. So it actually doesn't print that last time. So Vineet, you were correct. But I'm glad that you guys brought that up, because that is something that you should know. Like counting numbers and also using these comparison operators can be really tricky when you just start coding. At least it was for me, because whenever you're using the less than sign, it's always like one less, and you might think that's intuitive, but it actually becomes a lot more confusing when you're like kind of using for loops and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks, Max. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to stop me. Okay, we're gonna keep going on. So we're gonna go through something called a for loop. So it's similar to a while loop. You can actually accomplish the same thing that while loops do using a for loop, but sometimes while loops are just more convenient to use. We're gonna be going over for loops from a very surface level and just showing you kind of like this something called a range for loop. And this is very intrinsic to Python. You don't really have this in any other languages, if I'm not mistaken. You might have something similar, but I think this is pretty like what they call like Pythonic. So it's like pretty special. So there's 2 instances of for loops here. So the first one we're gonna have is for number and range. And something that's interesting to note is that it automatically starts at the index 0. So, and it is non-inclusive. So what that basically means is it doesn't include this last number that's in here. So imagine 0, 9, and those are all the numbers that it's going to run through. So the range is going to be from 0 to 9. So that's what basically range 10 means. And then for number in that range, you're going to print the number. So you notice you start at 0 and you end at 9. But for this range function, you also can specify the starting point. And then similarly, the ending point is non-inclusive. So it's going to be from 1 to 9, and you're going to be printing the number. So start at 1, end at 9. So that's going to be good to know for when you're trying to do more advanced projects. Different programming languages have different types of for loops, but this is usually, it's not exactly the way you would kind of commonly use a for loop for most like projects, but it's a good introduction. If you want to learn more, let me know after, and we can kind of go through something a little bit more advanced. So this is something that's this is something that Max really likes, and he'll be using the demo. So we thought we'd cover it. I don't actually really use these that much, but we should cover it because it is really nice. So this is a variable called guesses, and then we have 2 ways of doing this. We have an ugly way and a really easy way. So the ugly way is kind of like from our example way back here. So if we wanted to kind of put quotations around here, 3 plus 1 would basically smash the things together, right? It just print 31 because they're both type string. So if we go back to this, basically what this is doing is it's just smashing this plus this together into one sentence. You'll note that we put the string around this guesses variable. So this is what I referred to before, which is basically typecasting. So it's basically just changing the type of the variable. So yeah, this is what outputs. You have 0 guesses left. So this is the really easy way. So in front of a string, you can put this thing, you can just basically put the character F in front of it. And when you put the curly braces around a variable, Python knows that you're trying to insert this variable into here. So the reason why this is really nice is because a lot of the time when you do something, this is basically called like string concatenation. It's really annoying because you always have to like put the correct number of spaces. So there should actually be a space here and a space here, but it's just a lot nicer to insert the variable directly and have the spacing be correct from the get-go. So I guess the question here is, what would print if you didn't put the F?
Would it just say exactly that? You have guesses left? Like guesses left?
Does anyone have any other thoughts? Annie, I see you thinking.
Or there would be an error. I don't know if the curly braces cause an error.
Aiden, are you there?
Yes.
What do you think?
I don't think it caused an error, but I think it would just print you have, and then curly brace guesses, curly brace guesses left.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go with what I think. I'm pretty sure this won't cause an error because it's just a string and it doesn't matter. Anything contained within a string is just gonna be a string. You can put basically anything in here. But it is good thinking that it could be an error. So that is really good when you're programming. You should always be thinking about, are the types the same and will this cause an error? So whenever I'm programming, I always kind of use a string operator or use the int operator to make sure everything's kind of uniform. So thank you guys. There's only a few more slides left and then we'll be going into the demo. So this is something called a module. Sometimes like a library, I don't know. But basically what this is it's like a pre-built package for you to do really cool stuff that someone else thankfully has done for you. So you don't have to think that much. So a lot of the times whenever you want to use a package, you literally just Google how to use blank and then that will come up. So here's a link to the random module if you're interested, and it has like a bunch of examples. So there's a lot of nice documentation. So here's just an example of using the random function. So import random. So we're going to be using this module or package. And basically all you need to know now is just look at the documentation, look at how they do it, and then just literally do the same thing. You don't need to kind of get into the nitty gritty of, you know, why is there a dot here? And well, you should know like this is like a function, but Max will go over that. But basically just look at the examples and then do the same thing. And that's basically the easiest way to get through it. Some number is equal to random.randint 1 to 100. So it's pretty intuitive what's going on here, right? We're basically saying, let's get a number from 1 to 100. That's just random, right? And then print a number. And then 56, it could be any number. So the question here is, what would happen if you called randint without importing random? And feel free to speak up.
I think an error will occur because they don't know that function.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea. Is anyone else? Angela?
I agree. It will be an error.
Okay, cool. You would be right. I don't know if we have a slide for that, but yes, that always happens. So I've been using a lot of libraries recently, and sometimes I just literally forget to import them. So here's some resources that if you're interested, and also there's a challenge after the demo. If you're interested in learning how to do Hangman, I'll be here for like 30, 40 minutes after. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but we can go through it. So I'm going to shift and unshare and let Max go through the demo with you guys.
Sweet. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I'm going to open a new Replit, as I already have here. And I suggest you guys open one too to follow along. And like Oliver demoed right at the beginning, we're going to be making a guessing number game. So the way this would work is that, you know, if you'll have a set number of guesses and we'll generate a number using the random module like Oliver just showed us. And, you know, we won't know what the number is, but we'll try to guess it. If the number is too low that we guessed, then we'll know that then we can have our program tell us that it was too low. Or if the number's too high, then our program will tell us it was too high. But then if it's exactly right, it'll let us know that you guessed the number and however many guesses it took. Or if you run out of guesses, it'll say, sorry, but the number was this. So as we go through this, please feel free to interrupt with your questions or just drop them in the chat. I'll try to be looking at it. But other than that, let's go. You guys can all see my replit, correct? Okay. So how do we start, right? So like I said, let's do it so that let's grab the name, for example, like Oliver showed. We want to say, as if you're playing a game. So let's create a new variable called name, and it will take in the user's name. So what do you guys think? What function should I use if I wanted to get a user input?
Input.
Yeah. So we'll say input and then like a placeholder text, right? What is your name? And I put a little space here, and you'll see why, because if I run this, now it's asking me, what is your name? And there's like a little space so that I can like type my name, right? So I can put in whatever I want. So I can put Max. Okay, we have something. I mean, that's the whole script so far. We got to keep going, right? So now let's specify how many guesses we should have, right? So let's say num. Can't spell. So how many guesses do you guys want to use? Feel free to call out a number. I don't really care. We can have 1,000, 1,000,000, or just 2, or
10.
10.
I heard 10 first, so we're going to do that. But now we also have to generate the number, right? So what did we use last time what did we use in the workshop to generate the number? Can somebody tell me?
Randint.
Right. And how do I call it?
Random.randint, parentheses.
Mm-hmm. And we'll say, let's do 1 to 100 again. So would this code work right now? What do you guys think? Give me a thumbs up if the code would work. So let's find out. My name is Max. Turns out we didn't define random. Why not? Because we didn't actually import the module. But now if I did it like that, and actually just to prove it to you, we can print out the number too, just so we know. Let me just rerun it. Now I get a number back. It's 46, right? So we have a number set to random.randint, so a random integer between 1 and 100, and print it out. In this case, it's 46. So now we know that that works, but we can keep going. I'm going to comment this out by putting a pound sign in front of it, and basically that just means that the Python that will ignore that line because it has a comment. It has a pound sign in front of it. So now we can keep going. Great. So now we want to say, we want to keep we want to keep this whole idea of a game going. So let's print, we'll make this, we want to put the person's name in here. So we want to put formatted string, and we'll say name, right? So like this person, Max, Max, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, right? And so now we want to say, we're telling the person we're going to guess a number between 1 and 100. And like I mentioned, please follow along in Replit, like in your own Replits, so that you guys can make your own games too. So now what we want to do is, now we know how many guesses the person is going to get. So what kind of structure can we use to allow the person to keep guessing while the number of guesses hasn't been exceeded? What do you guys think?
A loop.
A loop, yeah. What kind of loop?
A while loop.
Yes, exactly, a while loop. So let's say while num guesses is less than 10, or no, that the num guesses 0. We have to start with 0 guesses. We want a total of 10 guesses. Yeah, that makes more sense. So while the number of guesses is less than 10, if we start at 0, we can play the game, right? So let's say, let's set the person's guess to the variable guess. And we want to take in the person's guess. So what would I use to take in the person's guess?
Input again.
Yep. So input, make your guess. And then we're going to do something else. Let's say now that they made their guess, we're going to increase num guesses. And we could do it two ways. We could do it like this, num guesses plus 1, and that just takes the current number of guesses and adds 1 to it. But there's an even easier way. You can just do num guesses plus equals 1. These statements are actually exactly the same. So for simplicity, I'm going to use this prettier one that's shorter. So yeah, now that we know that the number of guesses is plus equals 1, and so now let's figure out how many guesses we have left, so that we know, so that we can tell the person how many guesses they have left, whether or not they got the number right or not too. So let's say guesses left is equal to, we're going to say it was 10 guesses, right? So 10 minus the number of guesses they've already made. So now we need to figure out how do we handle, whether the guess was lower, higher, or equal to the number that we don't know about, rather equal to a random number. So what kind of statement do you think I need to make in order to compare that? I'm going to ask Jenna to do that.
An if statement.
Mm-hmm. So we want to compare what exactly with the if statement? Feel free, Jenna or anybody else, please feel free to answer.
You would compare if the guess is higher or lower than the real number.
Mm-hmm. So if guess is less than the number, then we print, we'll do your guess is low. And then you have however many number of guesses left. And since I interpolated a variable, I'm going to make it a formatted string, not a for, just a formatted string, so that it knows to insert the number of guesses left, which we just calculated here. And then I'm just going to copy it because we're not changing too much here. We're going to say else if, elif, which also just means else if, and that just means if this isn't true, go to the next one. So if guess is greater than the number, then we say it is too high. And then you still have however many guesses left. But let's say that, what's it called? If neither of these are true, then we can just break out of this loop, out of our while loop, right? So we can just do this by typing else break. And this is some syntax that Oliver didn't show you guys, but all this really does is say that, okay, neither of these were true, and what's it called? Neither of these were true, so we don't really, we want to try the next time. So we break out of this else if, right? We go to the next attempt, make your next guess. So now we need to specify two things. So we know now if the guess was higher or lower than the number, but what cases are we missing? We're missing two cases. What do you guys think they are?
If they get the number right.
Mm-hmm. That's one case. So let's make a new if statement outside of the while loop. If guess is equal to the number, then we say, print congrats. You guessed the number in num guesses. And we make that a formatted string too. Oops. And what's the last case? I guess, if you lose, exactly. So if guess is not equal to the number, if you run out of guesses and your guess isn't equal to the number, then we need to say, print. So let's say, sorry, I was thinking of whatever the number actually was. And again, I interpolated, so I used a formatted string. So I'll just capitalize this here. So this code, as I see it now, it is missing something, and it's probably kind of a challenge to figure out what. But I guess suggest, what do you guys think the type of this input would be? If somebody made a guess, would it be of a type string or a type integer?
Integer? There's a number.
Integer.
So, okay, let's try it. So, Max, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Make a guess. I'm going to say 50. That's a good start. So, turns out we got a type error again. The comparison operator is not supported between instances of string and integer. So, it turns out that whatever you input, your Python is going to think that it's a string. So, what we need to do is convert the type of your guess to an integer. And we can do that just by casting the int type onto the guess. So now let's try it again. What is your name? Max. I'm thinking of the number 50. Okay, your guess is too low. You have 9 guesses left. Who wants to guess a number for me?
$81.
81. Awesome. Too low. Okay, we're tightening ourselves up here. I'm gonna guess 95. Too high. Okay, so we know we're between 81 and 95. Let's say 90. Too high. So we're between 81 and 90. Let's go with 86. Too low. So we know we're between 86 and 90. 88. Too low. So it has to be 89, right? Nice. And you guessed the number in 7 tries. So if you guys followed along with me here, we covered basically everything that's going on, right? Everything that we just learned about in Oliver's workshop and Oliver's presentation slides, and we just implemented them all here. So we started by importing the random module, which allowed us to create a random number, right? And we used some input to, get the person's name, kind of make it fun because you're playing a game, and we printed a message for them. Hey, name. So whatever your name is, it'll print your name out because we interpolated it there. And while the number of guesses is, less than the maximum, you can play the game. And then if you guess the number, if you guess the number, which would fall in the else statement, it knows to break out of the loop. Or if you run out of guesses, it'll know to stop the loop, and then it'll compare. If the guess is equal to the number, you know that the person must have won. But if it isn't, then they must have run out of guesses, so you can tell them what the number was. So let's see what would happen if I didn't guess the number. My name is Max, and I'm just going to guess 5 a bunch of times. I'm stubborn. I think it's 5. So now we see your guess is too low. You have 80 guesses left, and then we fall to that last statement. Sorry, I was thinking of 80. So our number was 80, but I'm stubborn, so I thought it was 5, 10 times. Is everybody following? This is pretty much it. This is the program, and like Oliver mentioned, if you want something a little more advanced, he can show you guys how to do Hangman after this, but I'm really happy to take your questions, but we're pretty much done here. We made our own guessing game. And you can play around with this, right? You can extend the random integers. You can make them between numbers 1 to 1,000,000 and maybe give yourself like a few more guesses because that might take some time. But, another thing you could do is try to make it so that you can only put numbers in the input. Because check this out. Let's say my name is Max still. What if my guess is 100, right? It's going to crash because you can't convert the string 100 to an integer, right? That's just not possible. Python doesn't understand that however many letters that we read as 100, it could be an integer that corresponds to 100. So if you wanted to extend this further, you could kind of make another if statement to say if your guess is an integer, then you can continue. But if it's not, then you have to reel the person back and say, no, that wasn't an integer. You need to put an integer in. So that's like one idea that I had. But there's lots of things you could do with this. And I hope it was enjoyable. I hope you learned something. And I'm here to take questions, or if something broke or didn't work, you guys can tell me what was it, and I can probably help you out.
Yeah, guys, please feel free to ask us if you need help and you want to share your screen or something. We can divide up and just help you out.
For the F, does it have to be the letter F, or can it be any letter?
It has to be the letter F because it tells Python that this is a formatted string. There's actually another thing you can do. You can do R, but that makes it a raw string. And what that basically does is it's a little beyond the scope of this actually, but it basically removes any sort of styling that's going on. So we can stick to F strings, or you can do regular strings, but then you have to do string concatenation.